Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committee Meetings of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. A meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. This will be followed by a meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee.
All right, good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when that item is up for discussion. We ask that you please come forward to the podium at that time, and you'll be recognized, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to make your comments. For accurate broadcast and recording purposes, we ask that everyone present please speak directly into a microphone. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters. Here. Murguia. Here. Townsend. Burrows.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here. There were no revisions to the agenda after it was originally published, and so our first item of business is approval of the Standing Committee minutes from June 3rd, 2019. There's a motion and a second for approving the minutes as they were submitted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved as submitted. That takes us to our committee agenda, and all of the items on the committee agenda tonight are land bank business. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Slaughter and Ms. Carter, and they're going to lead us through items 1 through 7.
Good evening, Commissioners. We have a lot on the agenda tonight, so we'll get started. First on the agenda is some policy changes. We've been mentioning this over the last couple months, so we're very thankful tonight to be able to present this to you. As we did last month, we just want to point out a couple groups that were also instrumental in helping us come up with these changes. The Land Asset Management Team, our Economic Development Department, the County Administrator's Office, and the Land Bank Advisory Board. As we've stated before, our purpose is in the land bank is to get these troubled, tax delinquent problem properties back on the tax rolls as quickly as possible, and primarily through development. Some of the changes tonight that we're really hoping to focus on is having the land bank be a core strategic partner to all the local governments here in Wyandotte County. We also want the land bank to lead in a pro-development style of business, and also just to be more streamlined, transparent with the transactions we make with our customers. One of the first highlights tonight is we are going to do away with holds. And what that definition generally means is in the past where developers or individuals have come and asked for a large area, or even sometimes maybe not super large, but an area that they want us to specifically hold for them in the hopes of developing those. We still, as a strategic partner with our government and the other local governments, we still will, in a way, be holding, reserving property for future projects for them. And the other thing we'll focus on later is the creation of an option agreement that will give developers the opportunity to finalize their plans, get approvals, but yet also indicate to their partners and financiers that there's a control on the property. So that option agreement would be for 1 year. Again, it gives them an opportunity to go back to a banker, their partners, let them know that they have control of the property. There will be a non-refundable fee, $100 for residential projects, $500 for commercial. And they will be responsible in the maintenance of the lot. And just with most any agreement, we will have the ability to contact them with due notice and if we choose to end the agreement. Sales, this particularly just in response to our vacant lots, would be if it's a non-buildable, and we'll go over that definition here in the presentation. And also, we will probably be identifying areas where we don't feel there will be any future development or the development needs for that. I shouldn't say needs. The development in those areas may be a longer time frame that we want to hold. But again, development is the key, and if developers and builders are ready to go, we want to be a partner with them. And we've also added some language that would incentivize or penalize builders in that time frame. The other thing we're proposing is in the rehab program, we have them sign a quitclaim deed before we turn them loose in the rehabs. This would be if we notified them of non-performance and they failed to respond to us on that, we would have an instrument that we could deed their interest off the property. The lease program, we've had that approved before, but we also think this is going to be a vital part of the land bank going forward. And this would again be on non-improved vacant properties. It would be a 2-year lease. We have 90 days in there. We're willing to work with anybody that we feel a project comes along that property would need to be a vital part of that development. We have 90 days in there, but we would also obviously work with anybody if there was some sort of agriculture or farming type stuff going on. Sometimes we get approached from people that say, I want this land because here's what I want to do. And then as time goes on, that project gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think if we got to that point, we would want to push them more to that option agreement if we felt that there was momentum building on the type of development that they were looking for. And just like with any other agreement with our land, the maintenance would be the responsibility of them. Yard extensions, one of the big changes is in the past, if you owned a house and were renting it out, you could apply for a yard extension. We're asking that just be, yard extensions just solely be for people that own and reside at the house next to a land bank property. We also are going to ask that if it is a non-buildable, and again, we'll go over those definitions, to give the land bank manager the authority to go ahead and sell that property and then come back and report. And then, of course, if it's something that's buildable, then we will have the staff advisory team and the advisory board to provide comment and bring it to a standing committee. This is our definition of non-buildables, anything less than 2,000 square feet or under 19.9, or basically under 20 feet of frontage. Anything in a floodplain, anything that is landlocked, right-of-way, undermined property, and maybe some challenging topography out there. Those would be something that we may want to classify as non-buildable. Community gardens, we think these could be asset to the communities going forward, especially with some of the development. So we're going to only right now, we want something that's sponsored by a neighborhood that's associated with livable neighborhoods. We would really encourage that they partner with one of the larger growing groups throughout the city. And then we're also going to ask that they work with us to determine maybe the best spot for a community garden in their neighborhoods. This is something that we're proposing will be kind of how the new flow of applications that come into us before they come to you guys at the board. So we will start having, and we will put this on the website, a mandatory application cutoff date. So what that means is once we hit that date, those will be the applications we'll work up and move to the appropriate teams and possibly bring to the next standing committee meetings. Once all that information is compiled, we will send that to the staff advisory team and the advisory board to comment. We will have those meetings in accordance. We're looking on that second bullet point to give them a couple weeks of time to process the information, go out and visit the properties, visit the applicants if needed. Then we will, once the information is compiled and we feel forward of bringing a recommendation to you, we will submit that RFA and then bring it to the standing committee, and then if approved, it'll go to the Board of Trustees meeting. And again, we want to provide you with all the necessary information to make a well-informed decision. So in our meetings, especially with the advisory board, some of the recommendations that came up is, again, improve the document flow, improve the communication between the teams, and again, be able to get the information to you guys for decisions. We are kind of going to clarify and also amp up the role of the advisory board. Again, the recommendation and approval process we feel is going to, again, provide you with all the necessary information needed. We are asking that any kind of development projects, especially infill housing, we're going to ask that they just kind of go out and consult with livable neighborhoods, give them an opportunity to explain the project. Livable neighborhoods can also introduce them to the neighborhood groups. And then once that's taken place, then we'll start looking at moving their applications forward to the teams. Another thing is any property that comes in, we're going to wait one complete meeting cycle before we will then present to you guys to move out. And that's the presentation, and we're more than happy to take some questions.
Commissioner Murguia.
Chris, do you guys have an updated land bank map yet, identifying the parcels that are in the land bank?
I mean, we have the ability to do that. We just got almost 400 vacant lots from the April sale that we're still going through and classifying at least a recommendation of what we think we should do with those. But in talking with Catherine, our goal is to have something on the website on a permanently updated basis that will be, I guess for lack of better words, keyed and color-coded to let the public developers see what properties are available.
I know I mentioned during budget, are we going to be able to put up signage in some more high-profile lots that say for sale by the unified government? So people are aware when they drive by?
Yes, so one of the things that we're kind of starting with the opportunity zone areas as kind of a pilot test case because they're kind of more defined areas that have a very specific timeline. So kind of starting with how we can roll out some much more proactive strategies to actually sell some of these properties that are in areas that, or size of properties that could actually be pretty valuable for someone if they knew, that's one of the challenges that I'm sure you see is people don't even know that that's a property that could be for sale. So we're working on that, and then we'll kind of start looking at the remainder of the county and see where those are and start putting up some for sale signs and actually try to broker some of those lots.
But what if your district's not in the opportunity zone?
Your district is almost completely in opportunity zones.
I don't think Argentine is in an opportunity zone.
I'm not sure what the northern boundary is, but as I said, that's just where we're kind of starting because it's a kind of definable place that we can kind of wrap our hands around. But our hope is to very quickly expand and do that for the entire county.
Do you know how long it will take before signs can be put in other areas?
I don't know for sure. I think we can do that fairly quickly depending on the location. We would certainly take recommendations from you all as I know your districts better than anyone about if there are specific areas that you'd like for signs to go up immediately, and we can get that done.
Okay, because I think that at least could be helpful in identifying the lots that people have asked about, that I'm not completely sure whether they're in the land bank myself or not. So if I could get an updated map, as updated as the last sale can be, a hard copy of that, and then when will you have those signs?
I mean, we can have them certainly within the month.
Okay, so if I could get an updated map, and then I'll be able to give you kind of a list of ones I think you could turn rather quickly.
Okay.
Commissioner, I'll add to that, in addition to the physical signage, we're also, as part of this process of trying to identify properties that can move more quickly, beginning to match up those land bank properties with comp sales in the area and appraised value, so we can begin to get a better idea of those lots that actually have market value, not because we think that they do, but because the market is showing signs that in fact they're potentially viable properties for building. So there's some additional work that we'd like to come back to this commission with, in the not too distant future, that kind of begins to lay some of that out, that looks at, again, not just the lots, but also adds additional information to it that I think will make it much more sort of user-friendly to look at that map and say, okay, where are lots where actually you've got comp sales within 500 feet at a price point that a builder could go in and put in a house and make a profit.
Anybody else on the committee have questions or comments for the team? Commissioner Burrows.
Mr. Slaughter, the moratorium that was placed on the land now that we're going to lease, that is lifted immediately?
Actually, that's the next item.
Okay, I'll wait.
I guess, Mike, as I've shared with Mr. Slaughter and with Administrator Sieben, I do have a lot of just little wordsmithing suggestions and feedback that I'll give you. But from your perspective, these revisions do codify our current practice and work as an internal guideline for all of our departments who participate in this process?
I would say they go beyond just our current practices, but to desired practices based on feedback from the commission and the community that they would like to see, and also work towards helping us be able to do better development moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'd entertain a motion. There's been a motion and a second to approve these policy changes as submitted. Any further discussion from the committee? Anyone in attendance who'd like to comment on this particular item? Yes, ma'am. If you'd come to the podium, and I do believe the microphone is already on, and if you'd just state your name and city of residence and begin your comments, please.
Okay, my name is Rachel Jefferson, and my city of residence is here in Kansas City, Kansas. My comments probably echo yours, Commissioner, in terms of some of the wordsmithing. I noticed in some of the policy changes, words are changed from shall to may, which is actually a big difference when you're looking at a policy, specifically in regards to the Land Bank Advisory Board, and they're being consulted. There was a word change from shall be to may be. I think that may be pretty critical. Also, in regards to the neighborhood consultation portion of this document, previously it was so that the land bank did encourage consultation with neighborhoods, but it also was suggested that they provide some type of demonstration to demonstrate prior consultation with neighborhoods, and that language was taken out as well. So I would suggest that those be put back in.
If I could ask you this, and I'm confident you will follow up, if you could follow up with a copy of those comments and suggestions to Mr. Slaughter and to myself, I'll add them to the list that I've already compiled myself. As I look through, I find that the bones are good as I read through it.
Yeah.
But there are several things for clarity that I'd like us to bring back as another iteration of editing. So if you're okay to do that, then we can include that as a next iteration of editing and improving.
Absolutely. And if I may also, we are still working our way through all this document. So if there's anything else that we see that stands out, if I may include that as well.
Absolutely,
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
So,
Any other comment? Yes, ma'am.
so would the intent of the committee be to pass this, have it cleaned up and brought back?
My intent would be to pass this as it stands, to make further editing changes as necessary or as warranted, and then bring those back with a red line strikeout for a future approval.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters. Murguía. Burrows. McCarron.
Aye. That takes us to the second item on the Land Bank agenda.
Okay, it's the Northeast Hold area. Just some history on that. It was originally a 180-day hold that took, that was approved September 27th of last year. The master plan was in process of being approved, which was adopted on November 29th of that year. And that's, again, part of what we asked for the hold to make some recommendations for policy change. We then were granted a 120-day extension on April 11th of this year. And again, through the work of Economic Development and the Land Asset Management Team, that's what we just went over in the first item tonight. So with that being said, we feel there's no longer a need for the hold. Our plan for next standing committee is to bring those applications before you. So our recommendation tonight would be to request the approval of lifting that Northeast hold.
Any comments or questions from the committee? I have none either. Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second to approve this policy or this revision as submitted. Any further discussion from the committee? Any comments from anyone here on this item? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Murguía.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
And McCarron.
Aye. That takes us to item number 3, which are applications to the Land Bank.
Thank you, Commissioner. These applications before you, they are all current on their taxes. They have no code violations. And they are, none of them are in the Northeast. Did not know how that vote would turn out, so we just thought we'd bring everything non-Northeast tonight. 6-yard extensions, 2 property acquisitions. We have a request for an art garden workplace. We have 1 new construction application and 2 that are for parking lot. The first one is 1109 State Avenue, and the applicant is at 1107. The applicant is, there are 2 land bank lots. 1109 is the one next to the applicant here at 1107. And as you can see on the picture on the right, it'll be the property just to the west of them. There are trees that separate those 2 land bank properties. We have 1051 Ella. The applicant is at 1049 Ella. 1049 is here on the east, the land bank there on the west. 1508 Armstrong, the applicant lives at 1432, and that's the land bank property on the picture on the right to the west. Yes.
They are because this particular block runs from 14th to 16th without interruption, so the numbering changes halfway through.
We have another yard extension for 2438, or I'm sorry, 2436 South 18th, and the applicant's at 2438, and there's a picture. The applicant's house is right just over here. I didn't get a good picture of that. 717 South 9th, and the land bank property is 719 South 9th. 1043 Armstrong, and the land bank property, the land bank is 1043, the property is 1041. Actually, I have those mixed up. It should be 1041 is the land bank property.
Chris, I have a question here. I've seen Gobi Corp. twice here. Are they property owner landlords?
Yes.
Okay.
Property acquisition of 2445 South 12th. That is this property. This is still shaded in red, but we've already approved, or you guys approved, both of these, so I don't know why that's still in red, but the applicant's property is 2443.
Chris, I have a question about this. There is a lot I'm looking for because we gave one lot, I think it's this address. Melissa, is this the address we talked about?
These two, I'm not sure. I think it was late of 2018, he was approved and purchased these two here.
Yeah, this is the problem. Is this it? Is this recommended for approval?
It's presented.
Okay, so are you aware that if it's the same law, which I'm thinking it is, you might want to check your email. I went out there because the neighbors are complaining because the lot next door to this house that they currently own has all sorts of debris and construction material stacked up in it. And then for months, it's had a, I don't know what you call those, like they scoop stuff up with. It's like a tractor thing.
Bobcat.
Yeah, that's it. It's had a Bobcat parked on the grass or on an unimproved surface for months. And there is also piles of, looks like old sidewalk.
I did go out and take some pictures.
Yeah, that's it.
I've had plenty of conversations with Mr. Lugo. The reason he has applied for these properties is to clean up the area. I have been on emails, talking with codes and community policing about this. Don't believe Mr. Lugo's here tonight, but again, the only thing I can state on his behalf is his sole purpose was to clean up these properties.
How long has he owned the lot again, the one that we already gave him?
I think he purchased it this spring.
So if he doesn't clean it up and he keeps parking a Bobcat there and more debris gets added down there, what happens then? Do they have?
We would have the ability to serve him notice, and if he didn't comply, we could take the property back. It's my understanding that this is,
Is he connected to 2449 South 12th Terrace? Because that's the one that I have in my email. It's 49, not 43 or 45.
this is his property.
Yes.
Which I believe is, I have his app, I'll get you the correct app.
And there is a ticket it hadn't been processed, but it was being processed.
It's what, say, Melissa?
A ticket that was issued.
2437 is the address of the house.
And is that the one with the code violation?
2449.
And is that his property as well? So, our policy says that if you have a code violation, you're not supposed to be eligible to buy these. So if he has a code violation, why would it be up for us to approve or not?
In our background of the application, we did not find a code violation.
This is a ticket for illegal dumping, which is, I think, maybe not in the same vein, so.
And I believe all this probably took place well after his application was originally submitted.
Okay, well, since it doesn't seem like we kind of all know what's going on, so thanks for the information and looking it up. But if he's really interested in this, and then we can move on, and really interested in cleaning up, great. But Wally has a pending code violation, and until the other stuff gets cleaned up, I don't think it should be on here for approval.
Okay, if I can go through the rest of them, then we
That'd be
can
great.
address.
I just didn't want to forget, and, I saw the address.
Okay.
Mr. Slaughter, I'd like to go back to the landlord question or comment that was made. We're giving property out of the land bank to those that are turning properties into rental properties, whether it be lease or rent. Do we know if these are absentee landlords? Do we have any kind of information on that?
So I happen to know that this gentleman, if you're talking about this guy, he lives in Wyandotte County, but he lives out west. 78th.
My understanding of the land bank is that the properties are to be used as yard extensions. I would assume that that would be for homeowner purposes, not saying a landlord's not a homeowner, but they are not residing there. I guess that's a piece of the puzzle I hadn't considered, but maybe our assistant administrator can share with me.
So I don't have an answer for the one for you tonight. That is a policy change that's not recommended in what was just approved by standing committee to go to full commission. What I can tell you is that starting next month, we've cleared the slate of backyard extensions. All new policy wording that's in the document that you just approved at the start of the meeting will apply. Most of these will not come forward going forward because most of them are buildable lots. So the most they could do is use them for a garden temporarily under a lease. So this is the last of these that you will see that are buildable lots that are adjacent to a property regardless of its owner or renter. But that is something that we can talk about and bring back to you when we bring back the edits that Commissioner McKiernan is also recommending, okay? So how you want to act on this one tonight, I'm not giving you an answer, but what I am telling you is it's not addressed in the policy. This is the first time that that's come up, so it's a good thing to look at. But I will say is that these coming forward, all of the ones that Chris is showing would not present as severe topography, less than 19 feet, so on and so forth. These wouldn't be recommended for anything other than a lease.
I appreciate that. What I would hope that if we're putting criteria in place, as Commissioner Murguia brought up in reference to the zoning, the codes violation, I would hope that if we're going to give property to a landlord that is the property is being rented, that we give consideration to the previous inspection, that the property is up to code and standards for those that are renting property in our community, and that we address those in a manner that is, one, responsible and respectable to the members of the community that are looking for housing. I really think that's an extremely important message to send to those that want to rent and lease property in our community, that we expect their housing stock to meet code, and that it meets all requirements and policies we have put forth as a unified government to ensure that our renters are treated with the dignity and respect they deserve.
So in the policy that you all just approved, section 8.2, we actually do kind of make that point, well, not that exact point, but say that an applicant, if you're applying for a yard extension, that the applicant must be the owner of the abutting property, and that must be his or her primary residence at the time of application. So it would require you to be a owner occupied if you're applying for a
That's
yard
going to be in
extension.
the future then.
Yes.
Well, yes, if it's approved by full
In
commission.
this case, with respect to these two,
Thank you.
Commissioner Murguia's question really is still at play here, because if this property owner fails to take care of these extensions up to current code, then they would revert back to land bank.
There's always been language in our deeds that state that. And again, Commissioner Burrows, to your point, with what we have access in the system that codes enters their findings, if we do find a violation, we do send them a letter, ask them to correct that before we'll move an application forward. As far as the yard extensions go, it's general practice that once they're approved, they get combined with the house, so they become one property. We do deal with a lot of people that are contract for deed, and we have to generally tell them that if this is something that you want, you need to have the owner of the property come and apply for it. And that's kind of like a situation you have right here with, or the one you had previous with the Gobi Corporation. But moving forward, if next Thursday it's approved, you have to own and you have to live there.
The reason why I'm bringing this up, we have this master plans that are going on all across the community. Central Avenue master plan, Northeast master plan, downtown master plan. If we have absentee out-of-state landlords that request property adjacent to the property they own to be utilized for yard extension, I'm going to find it very difficult to find that that's an acceptable practice for us to enter into. They're not in the community. We don't have control over them. Should the property fall in disarray or we find violations, they are out of state, and we're limited as to what we can do with that property and how fast we can remedy it. So I would hope that would be something we would consider in our policies as we move forward in reference to out-of-state or out-of-county landlords.
And I could see in the future that the information that you guys get in the future for these meetings would have comments from either the staff advisory team or the advisory board of these type of situations. And again, we're trying to give you all the information you need to make a good, honest decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the next is a property acquisition at 1129 Osage. That's this one right here, and the applicant does own the vacant lot at 1125 next to it. This is 1258 Southwest Boulevard. The applicant, who is here tonight, is asking for the property to use as a work site. He does a lot of metal statues, artwork, and that's primarily what he would use the property for. Next is 20 Kansas Avenue. We have an application for a new build by Pillar KC. He is also here tonight to answer questions. This would be a metal building that I believe he's even indicated he already has a client for. And last tonight is 1824 North 13th Street and 1308 Wood. The applicant owns 1822 North 13th. He's currently in the process of renovating that building for office space and retail. And the two land bank properties, 1824 is immediately to the north, 1308 Wood is to the west. And again, just a little bit of what I just told you. And this is looking at the property, and then this is the North 13th property to the right. And then this is the Wood property that is behind that. So those are the applications tonight, and we can discuss or if there's any other questions. Or also, again, we have some members in the audience that are willing to come up and answer questions as well.
Commissioner Murguia?
So I'd like to remove property 2445 South 12th Terrace. And then, unless, Chairman, you want to ask anyone if they want to speak, I'd move to approve the remaining properties on the list.
So we're going to remove 2445 South 12th Terrace.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've made a motion to approve all the other applications that are on the list.
Correct.
Second that.
There's a second for that. And then I just do have one question. I have one comment and one question. Two comments and one question. First of all, I agree with Commissioner Burrows about out-of-county absentee landlords. It's good to know that the landlord who is applying for these 2 yard extensions is a Wyandotte County person who's here in the community. It's also good to know that the policy revisions we are making will eliminate this going forward. Because one of the things that we have our hardest time doing is catching up with people who don't live in the county and choose to ignore us when we try to contact them. So I totally agree with Commissioner Burrows on that. On 1125 Osage Avenue, Mr. Slaughter, you said that Mr. Gonzalez had indicated that he was going to just maintain the lot for the time being, but could see building on it residential in the future. Is that correct?
That's what he's indicated to us.
Okay. I'll reference that application when we get up to item number 6 on your agenda. And then I would just love to know real briefly from Pillar what kind of business they're looking at putting in the 20 Kansas Avenue space. It's really exciting to get a new commercial business at that part of Kansas Avenue.
Hello, my name is Rogelio Avalos, and I'm with Pillar KC, and I live in Olathe, Kansas. We are planning on putting our business there, Pillar KC, and then another business that we created this year are in our concrete. So 2 businesses will be there.
That's all I needed to know. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
If you haven't recognized, Pillar is one of our leading rehabbers, and he's done multiple properties.
Actually, once he stood up from the back row, I went, oh, him.
So we're glad to see that he's branching out, and
Fantastic. Love to have it. So there's been a motion and a second to approve all applications with the exception of 2445 South 12th Terrace. Any other comment from the committee? Commissioner Burrows.
The properties on North 13th and Wood Avenue, will they be paved or improved, or are they going to stay the same?
no, we will indicate what the guidelines are to have a paved surface for parking is, and he's currently in conversations with planning as a result, or it relates, I'm sorry, to the renovation of his building. And he is here if he wants to, if you want to have him address it as well.
I just wanted to ensure that we're not going to have two lots that are not properly set up for a parking lot being utilized and not having the proper surfaces put on them, and then he finds himself in a code violation, and we find ourselves.
We always encourage them to visit the planning department to know what they have to do.
Sir, if you want to give your name and city of residence for the record, and then respond to Commissioner Burrows.
Good evening. I'm David Kochavi. I live in Overland Park. We're setting a feet here in KCK. We acquired this building earlier this year in April. We're under renovation, and we're going to development review committee next week, specifically also to speak about the requirements for the parking lots. This needs to be a parking lot because this building has 4 shops and 6 office units. Well, that's about 20 people need to park somewhere, and there's no other parking in the area.
And I'm assuming that they have met with Rob Richardson to ensure that there will be ample parking to meet the criteria of the building. I would assume that has occurred.
Yes, and we have the committee also.
Yeah, they're going to Development Review Committee
Next week.
Yeah, next week.
Great.
This
Thank you.
week,
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow, sorry, tomorrow.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
for investing in our community.
Welcome.
Absolutely. Any other comment on any of the other applications that are on the agenda?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters,
Aye.
Murkia,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
and McKiernan.
Aye. For those of you who are here with applications, unless you are applying for 2443 South 12th Terrace, those applications have been approved, and you can follow up with Mr. Slaughter tomorrow or later this week.
So I'd make a motion to deny. I'm assuming we have to go through that process. It can't just hang out there?
I'm believing you are correct.
Okay.
You correct?
So I'd make a motion to
You could
deny.
deny.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, you could deny or you could hold it over,
Okay.
either
We
one.
could hold it over. I mean, if he's really going to clean it up, great. But if he's not, yeah, I'm not okay with that.
Point of order, if I may. The motion was made to include all and exclude the one, is the way I understood the motion. So I don't think we need additional action on the second part of that, the exclusion or to hold over. We just chose not to advance that particular item.
Correct. I mean, it would be probably, it's best to provide direction if you want to see this back.
Okay. I will reach out to Mr. Lugo and explain the concerns of the committee and explain that until some sort of plan of action is taken and corrected, that we will not be able to advance his application.
So at this point, to Commissioner Burrow's point, it does not move forward. He can choose to reapply at a later date.
Based on the latest communications and what's going on, again, we'll reiterate to him that this is what's holding up us presenting his application for approval.
Okay.
And we'll work with them to figure out the best plan of action, or if it's just, he may just decide, then I don't want it, we'll talk to him.
Real quickly, what's the time frame again if someone buys a property out of the land bank and they take care of it for a while, but then stop taking care of it? Are you saying indefinitely at any point in time, for years and years, we can go back and take that property back? Or are you saying for a 3-year period, a 5-year period, what?
We can look at it at any time, sure. It's a little bit tougher on a yard extension because then it's consolidated with the house. But, I mean, if something happened that was brought to our attention, we would probably serve them a notice with a 30-day time frame to correct, and definitely entertain the option of taking the property back.
Is it a requirement that they consolidate them with the residential property?
That's how we've had it in the policy, and it's still currently in the policy that was approved tonight.
Okay. All right, thanks.
And our thought is if it is a renter, I mean, I know we're changing that, and they leave, they can't obviously take the property with them. So that's why we figured for at least yard extensions that we would consolidate the property.
Okay.
And it would be very difficult if the property were sold to a new owner, because that contract was between us unless it were filed with the deed to provide the new owner notice. So if we have this agreement, someone comes in and gets code violations, we couldn't just take the property from them.
So, I'm sorry, one more question. So are you telling me somebody could come and buy a piece of land bank property and then a month later resell it to someone else and we have no recourse?
You know, generally, we tell them that they're going to need to at least hold on to it for a year. We have been approached future sales, and we've been asked to file a release of obligations, which we've done. But yeah, sure, that scenario could come up.
Okay.
Any other questions on item number 3, applications? That'll take us then to item number 4, sale of the former Whittier School.
This is a project we've been working on for some time. We obtained this property out of tax sale 332 back in December of 2014. We've had some fires. We've had several break-ins along the way. At one point, we presented this as a potential LIHTC project, but it was not awarded. So we were approached by Casey Casas LLC, and this is a little bit about what they're planning on doing. They're going to build 28 apartments, 4 studio, 12 one-bed, 12 two-bedroom apartments, mainly on the upper floors. There will be retail on the main floor and some improvements, or I should say definite improvements to the exterior and the landscaping. So that's really the presentation I had tonight. There was more information in your packet, including more details on their proposal we could go over.
I just have a question. Did we inherit that through the land bank from the school district?
No, we got it from the tax sale.
But who was the owner?
There was, so after the school district had it, I believe it went to El Centro for a while, and then it went to a private individual who lived in Independence or Kansas City, Missouri. It was 10 years tax delinquent, I believe, at the point that we finally put it in a tax sale, and no one bid on it, as I recall. Well, no one bid on it. And this was the very first property we took in from a tax sale.
Okay. That's commercial, like,
That, yeah, exactly,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, okay.
Do we know if these would be market rate apartments?
Yes, they'll be market rate.
Market rate. Great.
My only comment is, I'm thrilled to see somebody other than us own this building and take care of the property, and I'm thrilled to have market rate apartments on 10th Street. I'm a little baffled as to how they're going to fit 28 apartments in there plus retail, but if they can pull it off, more power to them. A previous person who did look at this building, who has some knowledge of rehabilitation of historic structures like this, did say to me that the bones of this building are still very good, despite the one fire that mainly just damaged woodwork and an old blackboard that was in there.
Some of the windows were destroyed.
Yeah. Well, part of that was gaining access to the structure. So I'm thrilled to have it. I hope they can pull off their vision.
Yeah, their hope is to get in as soon as possible this fall to really completely secure it. I mean, we've obviously had it boarded, but have it totally secured for the winter so that come spring, they can start construction immediately.
As with a lot of our other properties, cleaning the exterior, securing the building will be an immediate improvement. So, any other comments or questions from the committee on this property? Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second to approve as submitted. Any further comment or question from the committee? Any comments from anyone in attendance? Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters,
Aye.
Murguía,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. That brings us to item number 5.
These are requested transfers out of the land bank 2521 and 2523 Hiawatha. The properties here on the east side of Hiawatha. Just a picture from the street. This is part of the Better Block project with Youth Build. So upon transfer, and I believe they're in the final stage of a lot of their grants, they will start building, we believe, this spring. CHWC will hold the property as a non-for-profit home builder. And so the request is for that transfer.
There's been a motion to approve as submitted. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second to approve the transfer as submitted. Any further discussion among the committee? Any comment from anyone in attendance on this item? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters. Murkia. Burrows. McKiernan.
Aye. That takes us to item number 6, a donation.
We have a donation request for 271 South 12th Street. The owner is the Robot Automation Integration Incorporated. Properties there outlined in green. The applicant has stated that he can no longer take care of the property. I would say it's safe to say this property was purchased from a tax sale years ago in speculation, and that speculation never panned out.
I have spoken with the person who owns this property, and he says that he was under the impression he had directed a previous staff to take this property 20 years ago, and that it, for whatever reason, was not taken. And at this point, he has no intention of maintaining it, nor does he want it in his ownership. Any comments or questions from the committee on this particular item? There's a motion and a second to approve this donation as submitted. Any other discussion? Any comments from anyone in attendance? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Murkia. Aye. Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. That brings us to item number 7, which is an update on the Land Bank Rehab Program.
This is our monthly update. Before we get started, I would like to say, recently we've had some discussions with the police department about a need for some of our, especially our homes in the rehab program, to be used for training purposes for their officers and cadets. We are in ownership of the building at 1060 Minnesota. That property will eventually be torn down for a, I guess, water pollution project. And the Whittier building, they also used, I think this past weekend. And partly what they expressed to us is the tragedy that happened a couple months ago over at the deli, and mainly for hostage situations, is they develop their own charges to blow locks off, blow the hinges off doors and stuff, but they need stuff to experiment on to make sure that the charges aren't too powerful. So just wanted to point that out, that we told them we would be more than thrilled to help them out, help the cadets and the officers out, get the training they need for future situations, and hopefully those that training does come in handy. So with that, we'll go into our update. This is showing the number of properties currently in, or this is the tax sale that we just got from April. So total, we got 6 houses. One, we've already started the process to demo. It was half caved in. I mean, there was trees growing in it. It had been that way for so long. So we have a couple open houses. We have one scheduled for tomorrow, and then we'll probably have a couple next week. Number of contractors continues to grow. I believe we're at 158. Number of houses, we are currently sitting at about 82, and that does include the ones from the last tax sale. Number of offers, we're down to, with no offers, I'm sorry, is 5. Demos completed, we're still at 33. The house is recommended, as we mentioned earlier, we're up to 15 on those. Rehab started, we're at 58. The ones we're waiting on closing we're at 4. And again, that could generally mean waiting for title insurance, or one, we're currently working with the state to have some tanks removed, and we have an offer that we like, but we're just waiting to get all that stuff taken care of. The completed rehabs, we're now up to 37, which brings us to the latest, 1523 Greeley Avenue. This property was in pretty good shape from what we're used to.
Yeah.
And so this is a picture of the finished rehab. Picture right when you walk in the door, the staircase is just, that blew me away. Probably took me 15 seconds just take the next picture because it's just remarkable. One of the downstairs rooms there on the right. Updated kitchen and bath. Another bedroom, improvements to the garage. A couple more bedrooms. This is an upstairs laundry and bathroom and improved mechanicals. So this house was purchased back in December of 16, or I shouldn't say purchased, we acquired it through the tax sale 336. Took the rehabber 8 months. Was appraised at $20,600 when we received it, and it is currently under contract for $135,000.
So what's the first number? 10,881?
That would have been the minimum bid to purchase, to make a bid at the tax sale.
Okay.
I believe some of that did include a federal lien that was on the property.
Great, thank you.
And that concludes my presentation tonight.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your continuing work. And we will follow up a little bit with the policy changes, and we'll bring those back at a future meeting. Thank you so much. There is no further business before this committee, so we'll adjourn this meeting. We'll give BPU Board Member Bryant a moment to come up to the table and join us, and then we will convene Economic Development and Finance.
Yeah, good. She wanted to, I said, I didn't know we were gonna do that. She asked me, well, could you give me an update? I said, it's been months since we've had, and you had a recent update on the T-Bone?
Thursday with Doug on the quiet zone, and he said, oh, by the way, just let you know, we're sending out a letter today to an eviction.
Wouldn't that be something we should know?
Well, you would think.
So this is what.
Because he said, we're not releasing this public, but they might find out.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything to him. They asked me in the interview, and I said, I don't know anything about the eviction. I don't know anything about the eviction, and the last update I had on the T-Bones was months ago.
I think there was something sent. Did you get an email? Maybe they asked you.
Chris Lynn got an email.
Okay, random.
He got an email, and I had a meeting.
Here we go. Well, we will now call the meeting of the Economic Development Finance Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting. Public comment is always welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the standing committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You will have up to 3 minutes to state your comments. Please come forward to the microphone and you will be recognized For accurate recording purposes, we ask all present to speak directly into the microphone. At this time, I'd ask that the clerk please call roll.
Roll call Bryant,
Here.
Walters,
Here.
Murgia,
Here.
Townsend, McKiernan,
Here?
Burrows.
Here. There being no revisions on tonight's agenda that I am aware of, seeing none, we are going to move right on to the approval of minutes. I entertain a motion for approval of our June 3rd minutes. Should you have need a moment, please advise the chair and we'll slow down a little bit.
Second.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Seeing none, minutes are approved. Okay, we have two items on the agenda this evening. Our first item is a summary of the investments for the second quarter. And I see that Ms. Johnson is here and Andrea Parra, as well as our treasurer, Mr. McKessick. So with that, please, committee's yours.
We're happy to be here to present the second quarter report, informational report to illustrate what we've been doing with the investments, and I'll let Andrea Parra start.
Good evening, everybody. First slide, we're going to go over just some metrics. Average yield, we're at 2.1 for the whole portfolio. Days to maturity has lowered a little bit from 394 days to 304 days. We went and did some reinvestment maturities last quarter for a more short-term type of project for the liquidity. Portfolio components, 24% cash, then the rest is invested in CDs and federal agencies. Next one, a few other metrics we wanted to go over. Noteworthy enough, I wanted to mention first, we have brought all issuers back in compliant as far as the amount that they can have per their institution, which is under 25% for every institution. As we obviously reported and essentially promised for the last few quarters, we are there. And don't have any reservations that that will perpetuate and become a problem again. We're really trying to watch each of those items. We've added some additional institutions into that, so that'll be mentioned here in a second. Our average yield is slightly down. It was 2.2 in quarter 4 and quarter 1, dropped to 2.1%. Still above our target T-bill rate, which is 1.9. Just to mention our investments, we purchased prior to when the rate decreased. And then our portfolio size has increased slightly because we have some property tax due for distribution in September. Next slide I have is going to be what we have in our portfolio. We've got about $145 million in CDs. Then the other $58 million is going to be in securities. We wanted to mention that our federal agencies increased by the 11% for the portfolio because we improved some security diversification, and we also decreased some of our CDs because we did some agencies instead. As I mentioned last quarter, we have increased the number of our regional banks. We did have 6 for the last 2 years. We are now up to 9 banks in Wyandotte County that are active and participating in our bid solicitation and investment process.
I did just want to note with that Kathleen Bonaccia, our CFO, as well as Rick and Andrea, spent quite a bit of time this year meeting with several of our local banks to try to increase that participation. And as you can see, we were able to do that.
Were you going to add? Okay. Just making sure you didn't want to add anything. Yeah, we ended up meeting with 16 banks by the end of May. So we got a lot of activity, names to faces, and they know what our goals are from the unified government perspective and what their goals are as well. This kind of sums up, if you see in the middle section, currently prior to we called it, the bank tour, we only had a couple of them. Now we added 5, 3 which are brand new to the process. A lot of maturities happened last quarter as well. And I'm going to
go back one.
Yeah.
I did want to mention briefly, if you look under in the purchase section, the middle section, you'll see the final 2 in that section, Security Bank at $10 million, and then the agency at $30 million. Both of those, you will note, are fairly short-term. We were anticipating the drop in the T-bill rate, and we basically tried to jump and take advantage of getting a very short, what did we do, 90 days on those? Yeah. Just a very short period, but we tried to at least maximize what we could out of those dollars. We had to watch what we were doing with that because we had some loan debt or debt payments that were due August the 1st. And those two, you'll note, are coming due at the end of this month. So it was kind of watching it closely to see what we could do. But that's an illustration of what we try to do to try to maximize what we can get out of the dollars in the investment process. And then this, all those investment dollars that are sitting in are the holdings of the unified government. This chart here illustrates the funds where those cash balances are actually held. And if you kind of were to go through and start grouping them, you'll see that basically 35% of the cash we're holding is restricted for capital projects, for example. 12% is for enterprise funds, which those dollars can only be used in those enterprise funds. 16% is restricted by the state statute on how they can be used because they are grant dollars, they are special revenue dollars, or the tax levies are specific for certain uses, or their internal service funds. 11% is restricted for debt service, which basically shows that only 20% or 26% of the dollars we're holding is actually sitting in the general fund. Because people will look at the dollars and see 200,000 or 200 million and 150 million. And sometimes the initial reaction is, well, I thought you needed money. Why are you sitting on $200 million? It is because of those restrictions in place on so many of those dollars.
So if I may, Mr. McKessick, the 26% is the reserves that we have set aside in our budget that would make up a large portion of that 26%?
I think that would be a fair statement, yes, sir.
What's the oldest amount of money that you have in this fund?
We are restricted. We cannot go out more than 4 years with our investments. Is that the question you were trying to get to?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have the list in front of me. Okay. I know we don't go beyond 4 years because that is the statute restriction that we have under.
So none of the money
expanded
in this project, or in this fund, has been sitting there longer than 4 years?
None of our investments have been out for more than 4 years. Capital project dollars that might be sitting in that fund, I would have to defer to Debbie.
On the capital projects fund, we can issue a temporary note also up to 4 years. And at that point, that we need to determine, are we going to spend the money or has it been spent and we bond it? So most of our temp notes are, I don't know how much of that breakdown is actually a 4-year. We do have some projects that are probably in the 3 to 4 year range, but I don't know the amount of what that would be.
But nothing longer than that?
No. Because usually we're bonding, unless there's without looking at all of the projects that are out there, I can't recall any that are out there, because we've really been watching that pretty close the last several years. Now, we could have a project that extends more than 4 years, but if we issue temp notes, a set amount each year, say we have a large project that's 10 million, and we know we're not going to spend all 10 million in 1 year, we might issue, 2 million the first year, 2 million the second year. Once we spend that first issue, we will go ahead and bond that portion of the project.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's in essence the end of our presentation, but we are here for questions.
No questions, but I would just like to say thanks and congratulations on getting us back in compliance on the investment percentages. That was something that the committee has talked about in a while, and you said it would happen, and here we are today. So congratulations, and appreciate you getting us back into compliance with that. And I anticipate we won't be coming out of compliance anytime soon. Any other questions? Anybody from the public? Anyone from the public care to speak? Let it be a record that no one has stepped forward. With that, this was for information purposes only. We will move on to item number 2, and we do have Reginald Lindsay will be joining us. Thank you, Mr. McKessick and Ms. Parr. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is the second quarter budget to actuals report, and I believe you will have a document. Nope, that's the wrong one. To review. So with that, Mr. Lindsay, at your convenience.
Actually, Debbie Johnsher, I'm
Debbie.
going to lead the presentation, at least on the revenue side, and then I'll turn it over to Reggie for the expenses. So we'll start out with the Consolidated General Fund. This is the second quarter budget to actual report. It is also for information only. But we'll start with the Consolidated General Fund, which includes the City and County General Fund as well as the Parks and Recreation Fund. So this graph here is just a comparison of second quarter year-to-date budget to actual, comparing fiscal year 2019 and 2018. We'll start with the revenues. For 2018, we were, at this point last year, we had collected 62.9% of our revenues. In 2019, we're at 62.3%, so we're fairly constant with last year. Expenditures were at 48.1% for 2018, and for 2019, we're at 47.1%. So in the same range. We would expect to be at around 50%. We do have some expenditures that we may have something where we might incur the entire amount at the beginning of the year, or it could be incurred periodically throughout the year. The net allocation and transfers, you will see that in 2018, our percent of budget was 85%, and in 2019, we're at 78.7%. The net allocation and transfers is actually a net of transfers in and transfers out. So those are combined together into one amount, which is why this number looks a little bit low here, but it's because it's a net of the transfer in and transfer out number. This next graph is budget to actuals, comparing 2019 second quarter with the 2019 original budget. So we'll look at property tax. Property tax is showing that we've collected 100% of what we budgeted. I will note that probably in the third quarter report, we'll adjust the budget number to be the amended budget. So if any numbers were adjusted during the amended, those will be reflected on the next report. Sales tax, we've collected 42%. I know there have been several discussions on the decline in sales tax revenue over the last year, so that's reflected here. I do know that we adjusted this number down in the amended budget, so that'll be reflected on the next report.
Debbie, that's an important point. Is that that's the original number?
This is the original number. When we forecasted the budget last year in June, when sales tax revenues appeared to be increasing, we had a higher budget number for 2019, but we have reduced that in the amended. Other taxes, which include the franchise fees, pilot, casino revenue, delinquent tax, running right at about 50%. Permits and licenses are up to about 63% collected. Intergovernmental revenues, which are, I believe most of that is the casino revenue that we get from the 7th Street Casino, is included in that number, as well as there could be shared revenues from the state. Charges for service, fines and forfeitures are running at about 50 to 55%. And then miscellaneous and transfers in is running at about 38%. So you can see our total revenue to date for the second quarter, we're at about 55% of our original budget. And this is the same, the city general fund revenues just compared with the second quarter of 2018. We've got the same categories here and just showing what we've collected for year-to-date second quarter 2019 versus 2018. And it shows a similar movement, sales tax down about 7%. But
Debbie,
our total,
go ahead, I'm sorry. I do have a question. Fines, forfeits, and fees. Go back to your, can we back up one slide?
Sure.
The fines, fees, and forfeitures were at 54.2%, but yet on the next slide, we show we're down 10%. Are we behind?
well, this one is comparing the current collections to the budget this year. This one is comparing the current year to the current year collected last year. So we are down, we're up compared to our budgeted number, but we're down compared to what we collected for the same time period in 2018.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
So overall, we're at about 1.2% difference from 2018. That was the city general fund. Now we'll talk about the county general fund. All the same categories. Property tax is at about 99.7%. And same as with the city, we will adjust these numbers on the next report to reflect the amended budget. Don't really see anything here. Sales tax, once again, is at about 42%. Everything else, charges for service is only at about 37%. A large portion of that is the jail fee, and that could just be reflected that maybe we don't have all the billing in there yet. So, but overall, we're currently at about 78% collected of our original budget for the county. And then the same graph here, just a comparison of the actual amount collected second quarter year-to-date 2019 versus what we collected for the same period in 2018. And overall, the total, we're about 7.7% above what we collected for the same period last year. So with that, I will turn it over to Reginald Lidgey, our budget director, to talk about the expenditures.
So I'm going to step through the expenditure financials. Currently on the screen, we have the city general fund, and we got two different views of the city general fund. We have budget to actuals for the current year up here in the left-hand corner, and then down in the lower right-hand corner, we have the budget compared, or the actuals compared to last year and the compared to this year. As we start out up here in the 2019 budget to actuals, one of the rule of thumbs with the budget to actuals is we want to have the expenditures below 50%, and we can see total expenditures are at 45%, which is a good number. And these categories here, personnel, services, supplies, grants, claims, and capital outlay all make up this 45%. And we can see that all the categories pretty much here in the 2019 budget to actuals are under that 50%. And as we go down and look at the actuals compared to 2018, as we compare them to 2019, we can see we have spent $2.4 million more than we spent in 2018. A bulk of that is $2.1 million in personnel, and that just comes with the increased costs in personnel each year. This current slide is same makeup as the slide we were just on, except it is the county general fund. And a rule of thumb here also is that we want to make sure we are below 50% or around 50%. But we can see here we are slightly above 50%. And what's driving that is services. We're at 60%. And basically here in services, some of the larger categories are some of our jail expenses, as far as like inmate housing that we pay when we send people out to be housed in other places, and then also inmate medical. And so what pretty much drives that number is basically the population of the inmates we have. So we are like, compared to last year, we've spent like $368,000 more in inmate housing, and then about $200,000 in inmate medical, more money. So pretty much what's kind of driving where we're a little bit over 50% is the services here, which is definitely driven by inmates. As I move to the next slide, This is the 11 other tax levy funds that make up our tax levy funds. And so basically, on one side, we have revenues, and on the other side, we have expenditures. It's a summary of what we have pulled in so far for the second quarter. And a rule of thumb for the revenue side is that we look for those to be above 50%. And we see that most everything here is above 50%. All of them together are 63%. And then over on the expenditure side, the rule of thumb is we want it to be below 50%. And we can see that mostly everything over here is below 50%, except the county general fund that I did speak about. And then also Consolidated Parks General Fund. And one thing that goes on here with the Consolidated Parks General Fund is they spend a lot of their money in the summer, so it's a good thing to see that they have spent over 50%. Next slide shows a summary of 20 other funds, which are special tax revenue funds, which are includes enterprise funds and special taxes that we have coming in. And on the left side of the page, we have the revenues, and then on the right side of the page, we have the expenditures for these 20 funds. And rule of thumb, again, is on the revenue side, we like to see the revenues above 50% since we're in the second quarter. And then on the expenditure side, we like to see them below 50%. And so we can kind of see there are some funds that have spent over 50%, and so we can see registered deeds at 90%. They have contracts that they start costing out and start spending money on, so they have spent up a lot of their money. There's no personnel or anything paid out of there. There is a special technology fund. And some of the other funds, I mean, that's pretty much the only one that is a lot over 50%, and we can see Parks and Rec again. This is Special Parks and Rec Fund, is at 53%. But overall, we can kind of see that we are below 50% on the expenditure side, and we've spent like 41% of the money, which is a good position to be in. Are any questions about?
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Lindsay, I do have a question. The jail, when we pay the bonded indebtedness off on the jail, that will impact the end numbers that you have, that you just showed us, correct?
Are you referring to the debt service?
Yes. The debt
On,
service.
for instance, on the juvenile center?
Yes.
That would be shown in the county bond and interest fund, which would have been one of the funds he showed.
So it'd be this one right here.
Yeah, you have it at 50% now.
Actually, it's the county bond and interest fund. 2 down, right there.
Okay.
And the reason, if you're wondering why it only shows 5.8%, are usually we have 2 payments on debt service. One in February is an interest-only payment, and then the payment in August is a principal and interest, which is the majority of the payment. So for the second quarter, you're not seeing the majority of the debt service hit yet, but you will see it once we get to the third quarter.
So that 5.8% will change.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
And that's the same thing on the city bond and interest fund. It's only showing 25%. And that's because we haven't made the second interest payment or the principal payment that's due for the year.
Well, what I do see from this report is the revenues are up, they're meeting expectations, and in most cases exceeding expectations. Property tax value, the revenues come in, they're up, even on the county side, they're up. They're down just a skosh underneath at 99.7%, but it was in excess of 100% for the city. So that's good. And we knew the sales tax was going to be off a little, and that was something we discussed in the budget. The fees are the ones that I see. The fees were doing okay, but now we're kind of dropping in fees. But I know that we do have some discussions going on in reference to fees here in the very near future. And we see that everything's moving forward with the jail. So it looks like everything's right on target. Great, thank you very much. Any other from the public have any questions, comments? Let the record show no one stepped forward. This information, this item was for information only. And with that, that concludes our meeting for this evening. Thank you for attendance, and we are adjourned.
Thank you for watching. Remember, you can view meeting agendas and minutes online at wicokck.org. Or to confirm meeting dates and times, you can also call the Unified Government Clerk's Office at 913-573-5260.